Our generation is cooked. We're going to be living in our parents' Our generation is cooked.
I don't know if Canadians want an election.
What's up, everybody? I've decided to do this one live today because I was thinking about the upcoming vote on Mark Carney's disastrous budget, and I'd had a few things prepared in case it passed and in case it was voted down. And everything's changing so quickly, I just decided to hop on and do a live with you guys and share my thoughts about it. I don't think this result is unexpected. I was pretty much expecting this to pass. A part of me hoped that it wouldn't pass and that we would go to an election, but there's a couple of scenarios in either case where I think this would be a very bad scenario for the country. Obviously, the first scenario being if the budget failed, we would go to a general election and the elbows up crowd would be more emboldened than ever to vote for Mark Carney, and we could end up in a situation where he would secure a majority government. And in my opinion, at least, that would be the worst case scenario for the country, hands down. I think a lot of us are disappointed right now. I think many people were hoping that Mark Carney's budget would fall, or Mark Carney's government would fall because of the budget. I think a lot of us would have liked to have seen that happen and us go to an election. But I hate to agree with the legacy media on anything, but the fact is that most Canadians don't want an election right now. Unfortunately, many people are still asleep. That's just the way it is. The sad reality is Canadians need to feel more pain before they are ready to see just how disastrous Mark Carney's government is for the country. Yeah, that's the sad truth of it. Looks like we got 2 people watching, so that's pretty cool. Normally I don't do these things live. Normally I think about my topic for the day while I'm at work, and then in the evening I prepare everything, get my video sources ready, think about what I'm going to say, and I construct a short video, 8 to 20 minutes on a given topic. I don't do lives very often, really at all, only when something big happens. Like I did one during Pierre Poilievre's Battle River Crowfoot debate, which was a lot of fun to watch, and of course I covered the last general election where Mark Carney secured a minority government, and a lot of us were disappointed. Yeah, I was very disappointed in that. So let me know what you guys think in the chat. And feel free to send me a super chat if you wish to support the show. Obviously, that's not necessary for you to be seen because we have a very small audience here. So even if you just want to say hi, you don't have the money, I get it. Nobody does in this country right now. But yeah, feel free to chime in the chat and we can go over this stuff. So without further ado, let's get into some of this. So first up, we have the NDP. They were the ones who they were responsible for this. The NDP, the Bloc Québécois, and the Conservatives had it in their power to stop this budget from going through, and many of the NDP members, to my surprise, voted against it. However, they pulled a little trick here because they ended up being the deciding factor in Mark Carney's budget going through with 2 abstentions. So that's essentially voting yes if you don't vote at all. And so here's interim leader Don Davies explaining to everybody why they essentially voted for the budget while pretending to make a principled stand against it. So here we go. This is from CPAC. Quote, "We have decided to put the interests of our country first, to vote against the budget, but to help prevent an election." So obviously that's 2 very contradictory things right off the bat there. So he's admitting that the budget is a disaster and the NDP can't, in good conscience, support it. But at the same time, they're going to go ahead and support it. This is why the NDP has completely lost all of their relevance and credibility. So let's hear what Don Davies has to say.
Up to Budget 2025, New Democrats made it very clear that it needs to address head-on the crises facing Canadian families and invest in the programs that Canadians rely on. We have record unemployment, particularly among young people. We have a housing shortage and a cost of living crisis in communities across the country. Our cherished public health care system needs to be expanded, not cut. We need better childcare. Since the budget...
We don't need better childcare necessarily. I mean, there's obviously low-income people that need the help, and I get it. There's certainly room for some limited social programs there. But what we really need when it comes to childcare, guys, is we need a situation where... I know it sounds crazy. Just hear me out on this one. We need to be in a situation where working class families can, and again, I know it's nuts, but afford childcare, afford to be able to have children. Like most young people, like anybody in their 20s right now, like thinking about having children is probably the last thing on their minds because they can't even afford groceries. People in their 20s probably can't even afford a dog right now. So we need to be in a situation where young people can actually hope to have a home and hope to have a family and be able to pay for childcare, their own childcare. Imagine that. What a novel concept.
It was presented almost 2 weeks ago. We have taken the time to listen to our constituents and to meet with stakeholders. It is clear from those conversations that this is a budget that does not address the real needs facing Canadians. It fails to meet the moment, deliver transformational change, or address the urgent needs facing Canadians. While there are elements of the budget which reflect our concerns, on the whole, this is a Conservative budget. From reducing healthcare funding to provinces.
Okay. I've heard this narrative a bunch of times that Mark Carney is running the government like a Conservative. And while it's certainly true that he's taken all of Pierre Poilievre's suggestions, not all of them, but quite a few of Pierre Poilievre's suggestions and ran with it, like, pretending to eliminate the carbon tax, all of that stuff. In what world is a deficit that almost reaches $100 billion? Seriously, in what world is that a Conservative budget? I don't get it. I don't understand. Maybe somebody in the chat can enlighten me. Is a Conservative budget, does that entail a almost $100 billion deficit? Is that conservative or fiscally responsible to you?
To making deeper cuts to services than Stephen Harper's budgets did, including to programs that are helping Canada's most marginalized communities, to reversing action on the climate crisis, this budget fails to deliver the policies our country needs. It particularly fails Indigenous people. But through these discussions, it became equally clear that Canadians do not want an election right now. The consequences of defeating this budget would not be to improve it or to help Canadians. It would be to plunge the country into an election only months after the last one, and while we still face an existential threat from the Trump administration.
Oh, here we go again. The existential threat from the Trump administration. So it's just so ridiculous that they're still running with this narrative, because anybody who's paid attention to the situation will know that Mark Carney is sucking up to Trump like nobody's business. And this is one aspect where the Conservatives really dropped the ball on this one. Like, Pierre Poilievre should have been more on this during the campaign. When Donald Trump came out and essentially endorsed Mark Carney, that should have been Pierre Poilievre's, that should have been on every ad. Like, he should have been playing Trump's words over and over and over again and telling Canadians that Donald Trump endorsed Mark Carney and that Mark Carney is Trump's candidate. It's just, yeah, they're still going with this narrative. And when he says that Canadians don't want an election, it's quite clear that the NDP doesn't want an election, because they would stand to lose the most in this one, in my opinion. If they had only come out and made a principled stand and voted no against the budget, like some of them did, but clearly this was their plan, to have a few people abstain and pass the budget so they can look like they're, opposed to it. But hey, we all see through it. We see exactly what you're doing. Now, I want to bring this back just a little bit there, because there's something else that I have to respond to.
This budget would not be to improve it or to help Canadians. It would be to plunge the country into an election only months after the last one, and while we still face an existential threat from the Trump administration. On that basis, we engaged in conversations with the government about improvements that could strengthen the budget and earn our support. At this time, the Liberals have not been willing to make those changes. And so
why did you support the budget? Again, it all comes down to losing their support. Like, if there was an election today, he says that Canadians don't want an election, but the NDP really doesn't want an election. They have 7 seats right now, and if there were to be a general election, number one, I think there's a real risk that Mark Carney could come out ahead in this, because, like I said, Canadians haven't felt the pain yet. It's a sad reality, but I was really hoping to see an election. A part of me was. I wanted to see this budget fail. I want to see Mark Carney fall flat on his face. But to the same point, a lot of Canadians are still propagandized, and there just hasn't been enough time yet, unfortunately. I would give it a year. I would say by next fall, most Canadians are going to feel the same way about Mark Carney as they did Justin Trudeau. Because let's not forget where we were just a little over a year ago. Justin Trudeau's popularity was just way down. Nobody supported him anymore. And Pierre Poilievre was shooting up in the polls, and it was really looking like he was going to be our next prime minister. But enter Donald Trump and the trade war. And all of a sudden, it was just elbows up. I have to hand it to the Liberals. Like, that's going to go down in the history books as one of the most effective propaganda campaigns, and just one of the, for better or worse, I would argue worse, one of the most impressive political turnarounds in Canadian history, I would say.
We have decided to put the interests of our country first, to vote against the budget, but to help prevent an election. Canada is facing instability and overlapping crises. In these challenging times, we must put our country's well-being.
What a clown. He is actually saying, that he's admitting that the budget is against the interests of Canadians, but they're also supporting it. I don't understand how people don't see this. How embarrassing. Like, if the NDP wants to be taken seriously ever again, they would can this guy and they would find an actual left-wing populist. Like, if the NDP wants to succeed, they need a Jack Layton. And I don't know where they're going to get one because, well, they're already doing everything in their power to alienate like the real people that originally supported the NDP, because it used to be a working class labor party, right? It was like, I know like certain people in my audience might not agree with this, but like there was left-wing populists in the NDP party, and that's not what they are today. They are a bunch of neoliberal climate alarmists.
First, above partisan interests. When the next election comes, whenever that may be, Canadians will hold Mark Carney responsible and to account for his record and for the choices that he made in this budget. But today, New Democrats are choosing stability over political games.
Again, I don't understand how he can, like, this is classic George Orwell doublethink. If you guys haven't read 1984, you really should, but you might have heard this before, but doublethink is the idea of holding two contradictory beliefs in your head simultaneously. And that's exactly what he's doing here. He's saying, let me just back this up a little bit.
When the next election comes, whenever that may be, Canadians will hold Mark Carney responsible and to account for his record and for the choices that he made in this budget. But today, New Democrats are choosing stability over political games. Up to budget 20.
Okay, so he just spent 3 minutes talking about what's wrong with the budget, why they can't support it, but at the same time, he's talking about stability. So he's saying that this budget is a disaster, we can't support it, but we're also choosing stability. So they're choosing stability by backing an unstable budget with, again, I'd hate to sound like a broken record, but $100 billion deficit. It's not a conservative budget at all. It's completely bypasses what Trudeau, like the exact reason why Justin Trudeau lost all popularity, and Chrystia Freeland too. All right, so moving on here, we've got Pierre Poilievre reacting to this. Pierre Poilievre says Mark Carney's budget will drive up the cost of living on every Canadian, on food, on homes, and on everything else Canadians buy. Conservatives demanded an affordable budget for an affordable life. On behalf of the Canadians that Liberals have priced out of food, homes, and life, Conservatives voted no tonight on this costly credit card budget that gambles away Canada's future. And that's exactly what this is. Now, the comments here, let's check them out here. Mark Nixon says, sad day that not all Conservatives stood united. Of course, there was two that didn't vote. One was the, I forget his name off the top of my head, but maybe somebody can enlighten me in the chat here. It was the one, not Chris D'Entremont, who's now a Liberal, but there's one that stepped down, was announced he was going to be resigning next year. Now tell us why two Conservative MPs abstained. Exactly. Kirk says, enough with the nonsense. Use the time to fire all insiders and advisors and reorganize the party so you might have a chance to win one day. Now that's actually a very valid point because, like I said a few minutes ago, Pierre Poilievre really fumbled the ball last election. And you could pretty much blame Donald Trump and the trade war for sure, but he didn't really adjust to the facts on the ground. Mark Carney didn't even have to run against Pierre Poilievre. He had to run against Trump, and Pierre Poilievre just didn't meet the moment. He could have went on the Joe Rogan podcast. He didn't. Instead, he chose to focus all of his energy on rallies. And these are people that were going to vote for him anyway. I mean, who's going to take time out of their day to go to a Pierre Poilievre rally who's on the fence? You know what I mean? Like, I'm sure that crowd already had their mind made up. And he spent way too much time preaching to the choir. So this is a really good point. Use the time to fire all insiders and advisors and reorganize the party so you might have a chance to win one day. Exactly, like those advisors that told him not to go on the Joe Rogan Experience. That really would have got the young people. But you know what? We can come back to the comments here because that's actually the young people. That's actually a really good segue into what I was going to say next. So this is another post from Mark Nixon here. This was from a few days ago. Pierre Poilievre just called out the liberal boomers. And that's another huge part of this story is, and I have to preface this. I have to do my acknowledgement here, my obligatory acknowledgement. I look at my YouTube stats all the time, and I'm well aware that most of my audience is 55 plus. So yeah, I know it's not all of you guys, okay? So when I start to denigrate boomers, I know it's not all of you guys, but the polls don't lie, and most of Mark Carney's support comes from boomers, from older people who are retired, they own property, they're not working, they've got investments, they're well-to-do, they're not feeling the pain of this economy. And that's really what it is. Like when you look at the polls and who voted for Pierre Poilievre last time around, it was the most impressive turnout for conservatives, for younger conservatives in recent memory. Because traditionally, well, there's that old saying, right? How does it go? If you're not a liberal when you're young, you don't have a heart. And if you're not a conservative when you're old, you don't have a brain. It's some generalizations, but it's generally true. Most people, when they're younger, they tend to be liberal. And as they get older, they get a career going, they have a family, they buy property, they become conservative. It's a generalization, but it rings true. So Mark Nixon posts this one here. Pierre Poilievre just called out the liberal boomers. Your grandkids are begging you to vote for a future they can actually afford. Voting liberal means sacrificing their future. Choose your family, not the liberal cult. And Pierre Poilievre was on fire here. He's really appealing to the demographic that didn't vote for him. And this is what he needs to do. He needs to reach out to people that, not so much preaching to the choir. I think he needs to spend less time on these grandiose rallies and more time trying to build that bridge to people who maybe haven't felt the pain yet. Because believe me, guys, the pain is coming. Now, I hate to say it because I predicted that this budget would pass. I was kind of hoping it wouldn't because I really wanted to see it fail, and I wanted to see an election, and I wanted to see Mark Carney voted out. I think the best case scenario for Canada, I know it sounds weird to people who identify as conservatives in my audience, but I think the best case scenario for Canada would be a conservative majority with an NDP. NDP is the official opposition, and the Liberal Party just completely irrelevant. I know it's kind of a pipe dream, but I really do feel that would be the best balance of power for the country. The Conservatives with enough seats to comfortably let them do what needs to be done to reverse the damage from the last 10 years, and the NDP stepping up as the official minority, and the Liberals in timeout. The Liberals need to go on timeout for everything they've done for the last 10 years. They need, if they ever want to be taken seriously again, they need to cleanse the World Economic Forum, European Union influence from their party. That's the future I'd like to see for Canada. But I digress. Let's get back to this clip. Your grandkids are begging you to vote for a future they can actually afford. Voting Liberal means sacrificing their future. Choose your family, not the Liberal cult.
We have a lot of octogenarians in the room today, like old Dennis O'Rourke in the back corner there, and his gang here today, many who swung to the Liberals in their last minute of the election. What is your message to them to gain their support?
Well, the first thing is that a lot of our seniors are struggling to pay for their groceries. That they notice the food prices are rising faster than their pensions, and their fixed incomes make it impossible for them to have the life that they were promised. Unfortunately, many of them are stuck working longer in order to pay for the rising cost of living. Conservatives are the only party that are going to make life affordable for our seniors, but also you want your grandkids to do well. You want your grandkids to have the same opportunities that you have. And I would encourage every retired person who has grandkids, to ask them how they're doing. Ask them how their lives are. Ask them how their rent is, whether they can afford to pay their bills. And
it's so true. Like, I'm glad he finally said this, because a lot of us were saying this for a very long time, myself included. And it really it does explain the shift in demographics in this last election. I mean, the boomers, again, if you're just joining me and if you're a boomer, I know it's not all of you guys, just typically speaking, by the statistics, boomers tend to vote liberal. It's just how it is. But yeah, they're not feeling the pinch, and the younger generation clearly is. And yeah, like it just seems to me so selfish to you might be fine, you might be okay financially, you're not struggling, but all of a sudden you're afraid of Donald Trump because all you do is watch CBC and CTV, and this is the propaganda that you're fed. It's almost not their fault. I mean, think about all the elderly people in your life. Not all of them are technologically savvy, shall we say. The TV is the only thing that they know how to operate. So they're not on YouTube. They're not on X. They're not getting different sources. And even the ones that are on Facebook, they can't see the news anymore because people can't share news articles and they can't see the discussions. Now, a lot of people will defend Bill C-18. I think that's the one. Bill C-18, right? That was the Online Censorship Act, or the Online News Act, sorry. And a lot of people who defend that say, oh, well, it's not censorship. You can still look at the news. But that's not the point. Social media is the town square now, right? So it's not even about being able to share the articles. It's about being able to discuss them. And in my opinion, that's the real reason why they did that. And notice it was during COVID that they rammed this through. Like, they didn't want people getting together in the comments section of the news articles and just dissecting how wrong these journalists were.
And you might have been poking and prodding them to give you great grandkids. You might ask them the reason why they haven't been able to settle down and buy a home. Many of them do want to. I mean, a lot of young people who say they want to get married to have kids, and they simply can't afford it. There would be no place to raise those kids. So these are things that we used to take for granted in Canada, but I think all of our grandparents need to reflect on the opportunities that this country supplied so many generations and make sure that your grandkids have those opportunities as well.
I agree with that 100%. And yeah, these, again, guys, I know it's not all of you, but these boomers, they need to think about their grandkids, and they're just not. They've been propagandized by the television. They don't think critically about things, and they've just voted liberal their entire life, and they believe that Mark Carney is new. They believe that he's different from Justin Trudeau, because I might have a bias here because I spend a lot of time thinking about politics and reading into these things. Obviously, I have a YouTube show where I talk about it. So yeah, I've been in the know for a while. I know who Mark Carney is. I know who he was all throughout COVID. I know his history in the European Union. I know how unpopular he was in England. All of these things, but your average CBC, Global News, CTV watching boomer, they honestly look at Mark Carney as something new for the country, and it's ridiculous. I don't get it. But we'll get back to this in a second. I've actually got a message here in the chat here from let's see, Cleffa168 says, well, not only that, even if they finally start to feel the pain, they'll just say, oh, well, I only got 8 to 10 years left. As long as my last years are comfortable, that's all I care. Exactly, Cleffa. That's 100% correct. And it's really tragic that they're not thinking about, their children or their grandchildren or their great-grandchildren that they could have. But that's the reality. Yeah, no, Yeah, you said it better than I could have. Well, not only that, even if they finally start to feel the pain, they'll just say, oh, well, I only got 8 to 10 years left. As long as my last years are comfortable, that's all I care. That's a great comment from Cleffa. So thank you for that. Thanks for supporting the show. And yeah, so back to what Pierre Poilievre said about the boomers. Think about your great-grandchildren because, like I said earlier in the stream, people in their 20s right now, they're not thinking about having kids. Not at all. They can barely afford their apartments. They can barely afford their student loans. They're saddled with debt, and they are overwhelmingly voting conservative. And it doesn't make a difference right now. But I had something else here that relates to that. So this is a post from Table Salt. Young Canadian man realizes how cooked Canada actually is after spending $30 on 2 boxes of cereal and milk. Of course, guys, we all know this. We've all been to the grocery store. This isn't something new, but this clip really jumped out at me the other day, and it got me all fired up because it's so true. So this young man is saying what all of us are thinking. I'm just going to turn the volume down here at the beginning so I don't blow your eardrums out here.
Our generation is cooked. We're going to be living in our parents' basements until we're 35 because I just spent $30 on 2 boxes of cereal and milk. Like, how do you expect me to move out of my house when that is 2 hours of work right there? That's equivalent to 2 hours of my life is 2 boxes of cereal and some milk. Absolutely ridiculous. Welcome to the Liberal government of Canada.
So this kid gets it, and I don't mean to be condescending. I know he's probably like in his 20s or whatever, but he gets it. This is the reality, man. And this Pierre Poilievre post, let's take a look at the comments here. Here we go. Give us a break with this crap. Poilievre will never win an election to be prime minister. He couldn't even win his own riding. Hitch yourself to another horse. Scheer, O'Toole, and Poilievre, all losers. They need a progressive leader that urban Canada can actually stomach. Now, this is one I've heard a lot, and I did a video about this a couple of weeks ago, or maybe it was just last week, where I talked about red Tories. This was in the wake of Chris D'Entremont leaving the party. I don't understand this take. Are conservatives actually, like, do people actually believe this? Do people actually want a red Tory? Do the conservatives need to ditch Pierre Poilievre and get somebody that's more progressive and more liberal? I don't think so. I don't get it. Mark Nixon says you clearly don't actually know what's happening. The Conservatives received 8.6 million votes, the most in 40 years. The only reason we don't have a majority Conservative government right now is because of Jagmeet Singh collapsing the NDP party. That's a huge part of it, and I really like Mark Nixon's content. He's got the data. He seems to just constantly be on Twitter telling the truth, and that's why I really think he's awesome, and you should follow him on Twitter and YouTube. But it's not the only reason. I'm going to disagree with that. Donald Trump's trade war has a lot to do with it, and the legacy media, of course, amplifying that. So let's see here. What do we got here? Seems to be accurate. 61 here, and you couldn't pay me enough to vote Liberal. Of course. Like I said, guys, not all boomers. Good luck with that. Those Liberal boomers would literally throw their grandchildren into a volcano if it meant a few more years of being completely unbothered in any way. That's a good take. Poilievre has demonstrated that he has no interest in helping Canadians. Actions speak louder than slogans. He voted against everything that would help Canadians. Poilievre is ambitious. He just wants to become prime minister. That's it. Well, I don't know about that. He voted against everything that would help Canadians. Well, no, I don't agree with that one. The Uniparty strikes out again. Canadian Liberal boomers, the most entitled, selfish generation in the history of Canada. They have sacrificed their grandchildren's future for their ego, pride, and hubris. Yes, and the boomers refuse to listen. He needed to say something, but it'll take a lot more to change the Liberal lemming vote. I don't have kids, but all of my nieces and their kids are doing well. I really wonder if the boomers have the channel to receive Pierre's messages. And of course, here it is. Canada, per capita economic growth lagged for 10 years. Yeah, look at that. So this is growth in GDP per capita in real terms after inflation at purchasing power parity between 2014 and 2024. Look at this, guys. We're at 0.5%, way behind the leader, which is the United States at 20.7. Yeah, things aren't good in this country, not by a long shot. So we're going to move on here. So this post is from CBC Watcher. Kate Harrison, I don't get the sense that conservatives are jonesing for an election. And so I think, we're heading into a period of time where finances are tight for a lot of people and economic issues are going to be front and center. And I think that the Conservatives are wise to look to that dynamic and think about what they can offer Canadians in terms of some hope and optimism for what life would look like under their government. My suspicion is that the expectation is that you are here and you are voting against.
Mouth to mouth. All right. I don't know if Canadians want an election. Right. I think they don't. Yeah. I don't know if the hardcore Conservative supporters feel that way, though. I think they are itching for another opportunity to get the Liberals out of power. Am I right or am I wrong on that? How does Mr. Poilievre go back to Battle River Crowfoot and say to Conservative voters that members of his caucus gave the Liberals a pass, if that's what happens tonight? Yeah, again, I think that it's going to be more at the local level, MPs having to justify their abstentions, if there are any abstentions, right, and let alone any votes in favor. I don't get the sense that the Conservatives...
So obviously this clip is a little bit outdated because there were abstentions, and yeah, the NDP is going to have to justify those big time. Don Davies was trying to do a little bit of damage control there, and yeah, he just made himself look like a contradicting fool. Are jonesing for an election. It's been a tumultuous couple of weeks in the House for them. I would observe that the party wants to get back on the front foot in terms of leading the issues as opposed to responding to them. And I think generally speaking, they've been doing more of the reactive mode as opposed to leading on issues. So and the leader's not as comfortable in that posture as he is in the attack mode. Yeah, indeed. And so I think we're heading into a period of time where finances are tight for a lot of people, and economic issues are going to be front and center. And I think that Conservatives are wise to look at that dynamic. All right, I'm going to pause this for a second because I have some activity here in the chat. And I apologize, guys, but I feel like seems to be a huge delay in between when these messages are sent and when I receive them. Because the last one I read out, now that I'm thinking about it, was a good 3 minutes behind. But let's see. Sneaky Pete OG 9968 says Conservatives dropped the ball again. Could have defeated them last week, but didn't. This is Pierre's fault. Yeah, 100%. I don't disagree with that at all. For people that watch my show frequently, you'll know that I generally do support Pierre Poilievre. I think he's the lesser of the evil options. I will say that. I think he's got great potential. I first started supporting him before he was Conservative opposition leader, right around the time of the Freedom Convoy when he came out in support of that protest. Now, he didn't have to do that, and I've heard some criticism from, people to the right of me that are more invested in the Freedom Convoy issue, saying that it was too little, too late. And I get that, because during the height of COVID, during lockdowns, he certainly wasn't, it's not like he was beating the drum against it. You know what I mean? But no, I really think that he did take a principled stand, albeit a little bit too late, but I will always respect him for that. But back to your comment, Conservatives dropped the ball again. Could have defeated them last week, but didn't. This is Pierre's fault. 100%. Absolutely right. And not only that, but like I was saying a little earlier in the stream, they dropped the ball big time during the last election. Just their strategy was just non-existent. And Sneaky Pete OG again says, I'm new here, and yes, I voted Pierre as well, but I'm just constantly let down. Dude, 100%. I agree. I agree big time. There's so much more that he could be doing, and he just isn't. Yeah, it's disappointing for sure. Like, there are certainly like more libertarian candidates in Canada. Like that for like the 1BC party is interesting to watch right now, but they're provincial. And the PPC, to me, just like they have some good candidates and whatnot. They were years ahead of the immigration issue, but actually getting the PPC to even have one seat at this point, I think, is a pipe dream. Unfortunately, I don't think Canadians are ready for that. I hate to say it, but that's the way I feel about it. Earlier in the stream, I was saying that we're going to need to feel more pain, unfortunately. There is a silver lining to this budget passing. I know you might have been looking forward to an election there, Sneaky Pete OG, like a lot of us were, but the sad reality is we're going to need to feel more pain, because if there was an election, I think there's a very real possibility that Carney would have ended up with more seats than he currently has. I think an election would have been good because we would have had a chance to get Carney out of there, but there's no guarantee that it would have shaken out that way. I think that there was a very real danger that we could have ended up with a Liberal majority, which would be catastrophic for the country, to say the least. But thank you for your comments, dude, and thanks for watching the show. Yeah. Stick around, subscribe if you're not already. But no, let's get back into this clip here.
I can think about what they can offer to Canadians in terms of some hope and optimism for what life would look like under their government. And I think they need a little bit more time since the outcome of the last election and the by-election in Alberta in order to make that case.
And time could be the Conservatives' friend.
I think
so.
so.
We are going into a grim time. If you read the budget, some things could get pretty grim. So time could actually be Pierre Poilievre's friend.
I agree.
Right. Look, I haven't checked Politico in the last half hour, so I don't know if Dave D'Entremont, or Chris D'Entremont, excuse me. Dave D'Entremont's a guy I know from St. John's. It's stuck in my head. If he's changed his views on things, I suspect he will vote. But Matt Jeneroux, we have not really heard from Matt Jeneroux since the statement that he was leaving, and he was leaving quietly.
Yeah.
An abstention or a vote for the budget tonight would be very loud. So, I mean...
Again, this is an outdated clip, but he did abstain from voting, and it was very loud.
I know you say they need to get back on their front foot, but if a person who's still in their caucus, and they say when they spoke last, as Mr. Poilievre said on Friday, I believe it was, they talked about how costs are too high. If he doesn't weigh in on the budget, that's a back foot tomorrow for the Conservatives, it seems.
Yeah, the only observation I would make with respect to Mr. Jeneroux is that there is considerable defense funding, and there is a CFB base in his riding or near to his riding, and that's an issue that matters to him. But again, I think it will be less on Poilievre to justify voting in favor or an abstention for that MP than what they would have to.
Presence in the caucus, though, would be for the leader, right? You assume these are confidence votes and they're whipped, right? And so if there's the lack of an answer is what I find puzzling. The lack of clarity on if anyone's allowed to skip the vote, miss the vote, or abstain. We're not getting that from the Conservatives.
My suspicion is that the expectation is that you are here and you are voting against.
Okay, that's what I thought. And I'm not holding you accountable for this. It's just, I have to ask.
Check in with me.
All right, I'm going to pause it here because we have a few comments in the chat here. So Cleffa168 says, also seems like he didn't do anything about one of his MPs crossing the floor, which is a great letdown to those who voted for that MP because they support Pierre. 100% Cleffa, yes. But I mean, at the same point, like, what's done is done. Chris D'Entremont already crossed the floor, and he doesn't need the media attacking him in that way, unfortunately, because we all know, guys, the decks are stacked against the Conservatives in this country. The legacy media is bought and paid for. It's no secret that the CBC has a clear Liberal bias, and they have the motivation to be biased because the Liberals are the one that literally campaigned on giving them more money. So that's obvious, but let's not forget that CTV News also indirectly gets government subsidies through these Liberal policies. So like it's not as obvious, but even the quote unquote private news media in this country, they tend to lean liberal, and they would have that would have looked really bad for Pierre. So unfortunately, it's all about optics. But yeah, so when you say, which is a great letdown to those who voted for that MP because they support Pierre, 100%. I don't know where you're from, but Chris D'Entremont, embarrassingly so, is from my province. I live in Nova Scotia. So we had one Conservative MP. We had one MP in Ottawa that was standing against the absolute insanity that's been going on in this country for the last 10 years. We had one. That's it. And he left. So a lot of people feel some type of way about it. And I don't know if you knew this, but he was actually booed at a local Remembrance Day ceremony here. And that was quite controversial because a lot of people thought it wasn't the time or the place. But I know two veterans from Afghanistan who both posted that they support the boos. So there's that. And let's see what Sneaky Pete here says. 100% it was weak leadership. He just lost 2 MPs 1 week and everyone just called for Chris to be fired, when in reality there has been over 300 floor crossings in the history of the House. 100%. I agree with that. I don't think you're wrong about that at all, Sneaky Pete. It's definitely it's something that's allowed, but yeah, I guess we all have our biases when we're talking about these things, because if I'm just being honest, I mean, I think a lot of us would be happy if we saw a liberal decide to jump ship to the Conservatives, right? So there is that aspect of it. Now, what I think is most proper, though, in that situation, I think that if you're voted in by your constituents representing a party or a leader, and if you feel in good conscience that you no longer can be a part of that party, you disagree with the leadership, I think the proper thing to do in that situation is to drop out of the party and stay on as an independent. Because I don't know if anybody here is from Nova Scotia, but we had a similar situation in our provincial politics. What was her name? It was Elizabeth McCrossan. So she was, there was a border protest on the Nova Scotia-New Brunswick border in 2021 during the height of the COVID insanity. When, so basically, long story short, if you guys haven't heard about this story, this was back when we had ridiculous travel restrictions during the height of COVID. And, they were constantly changing the rules, where you could go, how many people you could bubble with, blah, 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 this and that. And there's the town of Sackville, New Brunswick, and there's the town of Amherst, Nova Scotia, which are literally like a 10-15 minute drive away from each other. And these communities are very intertwined. So you would have like extended family that live in Sackville, New Brunswick, and, some of them live in Amherst. They're very intertwined communities. And for the longest time, there were border restrictions. There were, the border was closed at one point. They weren't allowing people to travel between the provinces during the height of COVID, if you can believe that. You could still go to Walmart. You know what I mean? You could still go to a restaurant as long as you're wearing a mask when you left your table. You could take it off as soon as you got to the table. None of these rules made sense. So everybody was really excited that they were going to completely remove the border restrictions between Nova Scotia and New Brunswick. They had hyped it up for weeks. And then all of a sudden we had 30 COVID cases and everybody freaked out. And Nova Scotia's public health minister said, we're canceling it. I know we've told you for weeks you can travel between the two towns, but now you can't. And there was a huge protest, and people ended up blocking the border between Nova Scotia and New Brunswick, and good on them. And Elizabeth Sue McCrossan was the progressive conservative candidate for, forgive me if I get this wrong, but I believe it was Cumberland County. And she showed up at this highway blockade, and, she just encouraged people to keep protesting. They weren't blocking the road at this point even. They were just at the side of the highway with their signs. And she told the crowd that she was going to Halifax to talk to the premier tomorrow and that keep everything peaceful and that she would report back soon. And lo and behold, Tim Houston scolded her for it. and kicked her out of the party. And she stayed on as an independent, and she actually won the next election. So I think that that is the way to go. I think that if you're going to leave a party, you should not necessarily join another one, but you should stay on as an independent until there's a by-election. I think that's the fair way to do things. But maybe that's just me. So that's it for the clips that I had prepared tonight, but I want to maybe just check in on the main feed here to see if there's anything new. So how you guys doing in the chat? All right. So we got something about the Liberal Health Minister, Defiant L's. I got a lot of American stuff in my feed as well, so just bear with me here while I look for the latest. Here's another one from Mark Nixon. The NDP strongly opposes Carney's budget, but still props up his government. And we already watched that one. Ryan Garrettson says, I can't stand it when politicians claim to know what I want. Exactly. And here's Pierre Poilievre campaigning again. So when you guys were saying in the chat about how Pierre Poilievre isn't doing enough and his messaging sucks, this is exactly right. Like, if I could criticize Pierre Poilievre about one thing, it's this. 20 minutes ago, together let's build a Canada where everyone who works hard gets an inflation-proof paycheck. Homes and food are affordable for families. It's all the same thing. I don't think he's doing enough to really hammer Mark Carney. I just don't. I think that he could be doing a lot more. And he's just not. So here's one from CPAC. Watch Green Party Elizabeth leader May explain why she voted in favor of the budget. Oh, this'll be good. What do you guys think in the chat? Do you think Elizabeth May is going to be drunk here? Let's see. Is she going to be slurring her words?
You were stepping quite literally on the budget. We have video of it right here. You were stomping on the budget because it talks about getting rid of the emissions cap, prioritizes industry over the environment. Will you pay a political price for siding with the government in this moment with this budget?
I think Canadians want to see that leaders in opposition parties use the opportunities to negotiate for better. And that's what I did. So we'll see. I mean, I can't predict whether I pay political prices. It didn't matter to me if I do or I don't. I had to fight for my granddaughter's future, to see my government, the government of Canada, step up and fulfill our legal obligations. And I didn't see it in the budget. It wasn't there. That's why I asked today, there's deficiencies here. We're silent on the Paris Accord, silent on the commitment to nature, silent on the various steps we need.
Okay, again, I can't with these people. So she's worried about her grandchildren's future. Yet she voted in favor of a budget that's going to balloon our deficit to almost $100 billion. Seriously, make it make sense. She's worried about her grandchildren's future, and she's voting for this budget. And she rambles on about the Paris Accord. So she's worried about her granddaughter's future, but she's concerned that we're not being taxed enough. She wants the carbon tax back. She wants the industrial carbon tax to be higher. She doesn't want industry to be able to succeed in Canada. This lady is out to lunch. That's absolutely wild. Man.
To ensure we save lives in Canada. So my commitment came from the words from the Prime Minister, and that changed my vote entirely.
I changed my vote entirely. Elizabeth May is like the drunk aunt that everybody has. So let's see here. Sorry, bear with me here. Canada proud. Canada Post has released this stamp to celebrate the Christmas season this year. Would you like to see more of this? Yeah, I suppose so. All right, MP Dan Mazier says, happening tomorrow, the Liberal Health Minister and Immigration Minister will testify at the Health Committee after months of contradictions. Millions of Canadians can't get a family doctor, yet the Liberals keep increasing demand with no plan to increase capacity. Stay tuned. That's exactly what it is. That's our healthcare crisis, and the reason for that being mass immigration. Impact of immigration policy on healthcare and barriers to integrating internationally trained professionals. Yep, 100%. We need, not to denigrate people that come here looking for a better life, obviously. I mean, if you can work within the confines of the law to move somewhere better, why wouldn't you, right? That's not exactly what I'm saying. But our immigration policy has just sucked for the last 10 years. We need more doctors, and we don't need more Amazon drivers and Tim Hortons workers. There's tons of great doctors in India, so maybe send us some of those. And that's what the Conservatives are saying, and I can't say I disagree with it. Ryan Garrettson says, the Liberals should not be celebrating. This is embarrassing. Yeah, exactly. So these are the vote results. So we got 170 to 168, and that really goes to show you how close this thing was. It's crazy. So, and these are the ones that abstained, right? Yeah, so we got, I'm sorry, I'm going to butcher this last name, but it's Matt Jeneroux, and he's, of course, the one who is leaving the party. And we have one NDP, two NDP, one Liberal. What's the story there? Does anybody know in the chat why a Liberal voted against, or would that be just an abstention? Must be a technical error. I'm sure they're going to be reprimanded thusly by Mark Carney. So Edwin Morton says Brookfield is celebrating, though. Of course Brookfield's celebrating. Brookfield's been celebrating since April. What else we got here? I don't really think there's much new on the topic, to be honest, guys. So I think this is a good place to wrap it. Thank you, everybody, for tuning into the live stream. Sorry, I'm kind of all over the place. I'm very new with doing live streams. I don't do them that often. So thanks for the, to the 8 to 15 of you who seem to have been watching concurrently. Oh, geez, hold on. I missed some action here in the chat. Okay, sorry. Sneaky Pete says, wait a second. Yeah, this is a perfect example to demonstrate why I don't know what I'm doing here. Let's see. Yeah, Clef says, thanks for the provincial example. Yeah, I agree either. Become independent or just a re-election. I didn't know floor crossing is allowed. At least I expect the leader would go to court and challenge. And Clef says, great stream, brother. Thank you so much, man. I really appreciate it. I want to be doing more of these going forward. The problem is I really need to pick a night that works for my busy schedule with work and family and whatnot, that doesn't cut into my ability to make other episodes. So, yeah. And another issue that I have with doing streams too is there's so much, I don't want to say competition in people that do what I do. I think we all should lift each other up and promote each other and whatnot. But there's tons of other great streamers that are bigger than me and have a bigger audience. And I don't want to be trying to cut into their thing and do what they do. I don't know if you guys watch Clyde Do Something. That's a great channel. Northern Perspective, obviously. Mark Nixon, Moose on the Loose. All of these guys make really good content. And they all seem to have their schedules. And I don't want to do a stream at the same time as them. I want to find kind of a day that I can do this. And yeah. So anyways, guys, thanks for tuning in. I'm sure I'll be sure to put out a video the next couple of days about this disastrous budget and anything else that I happen to come across. But anyways, guys, thanks for tuning in. And as always, smash the like button, subscribe, hit the notification bell, all that good stuff. Don't forget to turn off the internet once in a while and touch grass and spend some time with friends and family. As much as everything sucks right now in this country, we still have the opportunity to tune out, get out in nature, and enjoy it.